Welcome back, everyone. We've got plenty of show left. At 11:55, we have a sponsored breakout session called Pre-Seed to Unicorn, Lessons from Hacks Robotics Founders. And coming up next right here, the past 2.5 years have helped transform fulfillment into one of the hottest categories in robotics. Thankfully, we've got executives from 3 of the biggest names in the space to help us break down why. But before we get to the next session, we've got a pair of clips from our panelists. Here is some footage from Locus Robotics and Berkshire Grey's warehouse robots in action. And then we're going to come back with Rick Falk of Locus Robotics, Jessica Moran of Berkshire Grey, and Melanie Wise of Zebra Technologies. And welcome back Kirsten Korosek to lead the discussion.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to TC Sessions Robotics. Melanie, Jessica, Rick, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, yeah.
Great. Well, we're here to talk about warehouse robotics, which is an area that is not new, although it has been certainly overlooked for many years. That is actually until the last couple of years really come to the forefront. And that's actually for robotics overall. We've seen a huge uptick in investment in VC-backed robotics startups. Last year, $17.1 billion was invested in these companies. That's 3 times more than the previous year. And this year, we've already seen about $5.4 billion invested in robotics startups. And the hottest sector among them is warehouse robotics. So super interesting area. Jessica, I wanted to kick it off with you. From where I sit, one of the primary drivers of this level of interest in investment has been the pandemic. What other drivers from where you sit have really spurred interest and investment into warehouse robotics?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, something everybody's taken a look at. I think, Amazon really started rocking the boat, right? The Amazon effect of get as many SKUs as possible to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, really put everybody in a position, even pre-COVID, to say, hey, I got to figure out how to automate, how to do things faster, better, how to continue to improve, or else I'm going to get beat, and then COVID came and that really amplified all the challenges because people needed many more things delivered to home as opposed to being able to go out and buy things in stores. And then, on top of that came the labor challenges. We had fewer people that were working, but we also had more challenges with keeping people safe with COVID and then supply chain. So it was kind of a mix, started pre-pandemic with Amazon, and then the pandemic effect really had a huge impact across the board.
Okay, we made it 30 seconds into this panel and Amazon has already been mentioned. So that's like the new record, I think. Melanie, I'm wondering if was any technological innovations that have also sparked or spurred more interest in robotics, or if it's, in line with what Jessica said, which is the Amazon factor, pandemic, labor shortages.
Well, I think there's a couple of things that have definitely happened, not only in the venture community, but in the technical community that helped create the right environment for this kind of combination of lots of robotics companies. One, Kiva getting acquired by Amazon was a precipitating event for venture capitalists to take another look at the robotics sector. Previously, a lot of people were very gun shy around hardware and the associated technology, specifically robotics. But that was a proof point that, robotics could be a venture backed kind of sector. That combined with, starting in around 2008, the open source community really flourished around robotics. It was the culmination of a lot of effort that was kind of the bedrock of that was laid between 2008 and 2013 by Willow Garage in creating ROS, the Robot Operating System, which is an open source technology toolkit for doing robotics. And if you look at the robotics sector today, many of our companies are using that open source software stack. It's very often likened to the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and Python as the basis, for robotics, in the same way that the LAMP stack was the basis for the internet. And so I think that combined with a lot of interest from the venture community really helped to accelerate the growth of robotics over the last decade, basically. Having money and technology coming together at the right point with a market that had the need that it did. Even before the pandemic, there was a labor shortage. We'd been operating at a negative employment rate. We had more jobs available than people to do it. And so it was just everything kind of came together at the right time.
Yeah, Rick, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. And specifically, if there's a ceiling. Like, is this level of investment and activity, particularly in warehouse robotics, sustainable?
Well, first, and Kristen, thanks for having me. I honestly don't think there's a ceiling, and I say that for several reasons. First of all, if you look at the level of warehouse penetration right now by robots and automation, at most, it's 5%. There are about 150,000 buildings out there around the globe, billions of square feet of space. There'll be another 6 or 7 billion square feet of warehouse space built over the next 4 or 5 years. That's all got to be automated. And if you put that math together along with the major problems that exist out there, we talked about labor. We talked about the growth of e-com, which is significant. Pair that with the strategic problem that all these companies have, which is how do I handle seasonal peaks? It's a big problem they all have. We all know the holiday periods. Business can go up 4 or 5 or even 10x for a lot of accounts, and they have to be able to deal with that. And one of the few ways of doing that is automation. And cost structure is another big issue they all have. And, we all of us, Zebra, Fetch, Berkshire Grey, we all help them with that cost structure and bringing it down. And you mentioned Amazon. We look at Amazon probably as the best marketing arm in the robotics business today. They have set SLAs that everyone has to match. And we look at them as being a great part of our marketing team.
Yeah, that's interesting. Melanie, you mentioned, giving some of the history of Amazon and really like their acquisition of Kiva. And we've seen a lot of robotic startups acquired, including yours, Fetch, last year. And are you seeing a lot more interest in acquisitions, startups like Fetch being acquired by either very large retailers or just complementary businesses?
Yeah, I think that you're going to see that over the next couple of years, more and more what you might call consolidation of alignment of products and product families and portfolios that help tell a larger story around an end-to-end ecosystem for fulfillment or manufacturing solutions. And if you look at for example, Zebra's acquisition of Fetch, it was very well aligned with their existing portfolio, right? They're already deeply embedded in the logistics segment by providing printers, barcode scanners, mobile computers. And in many ways, robotic automation is an extension of kind of that logistics portfolio. And I think that you're going to see more and more of that. We saw that with Shopify and Six River. We saw that with Hyundai and Boston Dynamics. And so there's a lot of proof points out there. Mobile Industrial Robots and Teradyne. There's a lot of proof points out there where you're seeing large, corporations seeing robotics automation as a portfolio extension to help them tell more of a automation story that captures the warehouse end to end. Because I think for a very long time we've been in these kind of silos of automation in which we're capturing part of the work, but we're unable to tie all the work together. And as these companies come together, we get closer and closer to telling an end-to-end story for automation that doesn't just live in the robots or in the cloud or in the data or in the hand scanner or the printer, but a symphony of all of these things orchestrated and working together.
That's interesting. And Rick, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on this. What I'm hearing from you is that it's more when you talk about the word orchestration. So instead of these more traditional acquisitions where it's like a large e-commerce brand buying a robotic startup, but really actually kind of interesting partnerships that you might not have otherwise thought of that either complement the business in a new way or bring it into a new direction. That seems to be where the winds are blowing in terms of acquisition. Am I hearing you correctly on that, Melanie?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there's a lot of proof points out there for even if you look at Berkshire Grey's business, they're creating a cohesive automation story that's end to end from the time the package comes into the facility and then is reconfigured and goes back out.
Yeah. So Rick, I wanted your opinion on that, and also Jessica. So Rick, why don't you, is that in line with your thinking?
Yeah, the way we look at it, there's no one vendor who's going to solve all the problems. It's just too big of a space. The problems are too hard. No one has the resources right now to tackle all the end-to-end solutions. So the way we think about it is going forward, this will be a collaborative environment. And it's important that in our case, Locus, that we work with other vendors, and we have a set of open APIs where we collaborate with a number of vendors today. Companies like PackSize, as an example. We have an account where we feed information to PackSize. PackSize is a box making company. They make a box that'll fit that order that we instruct them to do, and then we'll take that box and stick it on a robot. That's just one example. We have another example of an account in London, just north of London, where on the top floor they'll do a certain type of pick with another automated system, and then feed that to Locus, and we'll finish out that order. So we think the world of robotics is collaborative going forward, and it's all about solving problems for the client. And if that means collaborating with another vendor, so be it.
So I'm wondering also, Jessica, in terms of Berkshire Grey is publicly traded, which happened just about a year ago through a merger with a special purpose acquisition company. And I'm wondering if you're in a position now, or the company's in a position to actually do its own acquiring, because we always think of robotics startups getting acquired. But maybe you, or Rick, maybe you, or Melanie, maybe you are more looking at what's the next company that you might be picking up. Jessica, what's the perspective that you have on that, and the position of Berkshire Grey?
Yeah, I think, we're always looking for the right partners, right? I think our tech, having end-to-end warehouse automation or fulfillment automation technology is really important to us. Having, Rick mentioned, the right APIs so that you're easy to partner with and integrate with is really important. Making sure that the technology that we have of our own is modular and flexible, so customers can add on as they see fit as they're growing. And then finding partners that can play well with our story that can supplement and extend our capabilities to better meet the needs of our customers is the most important. If there's an acquisition out there that fits well and plays well into that, certainly we would look at that. But I think our primary focus is the best execution of the tech that we have, both on the hardware and the software side, and then picking the right partners to extend that to be even better.
Mm-hmm. Rick, I'm curious, you must have been approached by many companies. Melanie, I think I heard an interview from you that you had been approached before prior to accepting the offer from Zebra. So Rick, you must have had the same experience. Why have you kept the company independent to date?
We get approached by a number of companies on the venture side, the PE side. I think I spend probably 25% of my life fending them off. We want to build a really big business, and we're going to do that as an independent business going forward. Our plans are to do an IPO in the next 12 to 18 months. We're lined up to do it. We have the numbers to do it. And that's our plan. We think that is the best way to grow the business and the best way to create value for our shareholders.
That's interesting because from my understanding, there's not been a lot of robotics companies that have IPO'd. So what is it that's compelling for you, and why is the time right? I know you said it's coming in the future, but why now?
The challenge has been, Kristen, that very few robotics companies have had the scale, the revenue scale, and the metrics to do an IPO. Very, very few of them. Berkshire Grey, of course, did it. Symbotic did it recently. Both of those were through SPACs. We are looking at a traditional IPO as the path to go going forward. And again, the problem has been historically that to do a traditional IPO, very few companies have had the top line or the bottom line or the story to do it. We all know there's a big market out there, and in any SPAC transaction, the great thing about SPACs, you can talk about the future and talk about projections in a traditional IPO. You really can't do that. You've got to have the numbers to back up the story. So that's been the problem to date. And that's been the problem for a lot of, even though there's been a lot of VC money going in the space, there are a lot of VCs that haven't played in the game historically because they can't write the large check they need to write based on the valuation of the business. That sounds funny because there's a lot of businesses out there, including Locus, that have reached unicorn status and higher, but very few companies have had that level of scale to attract public capital. And that's been the problem.
Interesting. Melanie, did you ever consider taking the IPO track? Was that ever a possibility?
I don't know. I don't know if we ever seriously considered it. I think that if you look at where the company has been over the last couple of years, and what we focused on as a business early on, we were very focused on manufacturing, which is a little bit different than where Locus was focused. And we always saw that. And Rick makes a great point. There haven't been that many robotics IPOs. The last robotic IPO, I think, was in 2001 with Adapt Technologies or something like that. Like traditional IPOs, not to cast any dispersions on Berkshire Grey and going public through a SPAC. But it has been very difficult, and it's not something we really thought much about or considered, largely because it didn't look like there was much of a reasonable path forward given the I don't know, economic environment, let's say, and then the pandemic hit, and we got a great offer to be acquired by Zebra.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a number of founders who are going to be listening in this, and that moment of deciding when to get acquired or even entertain that offer is a difficult one. So before we move on to other things, I'm just wondering, Melanie, if you could follow up with this and answer, how has the acquisition worked out? Like, were you concerned, and were those concerns, have they come up?
Well, I think the acquisition has gone fairly well. The acquisition was a good deal in terms of kind of the attributes of the deal. It was an all cash deal. It's very rare to have that kind of deal, and there weren't any hanging kind of long-term earnouts and things like that, and the deal was structured very well for the team, so it was a very good deal from that perspective. The other thing that was really good is Zebra, bought Fetch with the intention of building their robotics and automation business around the company, so we became the headquarters of their new business unit, and that's given us some independence. And it's allowed us to continue to innovate in many ways inside of a large matrixed organization, which can at times can be very difficult. So I would say that the integration, let's call it, has not been without its turbulence. All integrations have their turbulence, but I think overall it's been a big win. Zebra is very happy. We've been hitting our numbers, and I think that that's been, an overall success, for any acquisition, let's say.
Great. Well, I want to shift to the customer because it came up very early on, and Jessica, actually for all of you, but Jessica, I want to kick it off with you. When you're talking to customers today compared to, say, a few years ago, what are they asking for? What is the most important top of mind? And is it different from what the top of mind concern or request was in the past?
I don't think it's different. I think there's more, there's more details to it, right? So customers have always wanted to make sure that they can deliver for their customers with high quality and speed and accuracy. What I think we're hearing a lot more about is the experience for the employees. So whether it's ergonomics or it's safety or it's job satisfaction. And so one of the things that we're hearing in using Berkshire Grey robotics and AI is the ability to focus humans on the things that humans want to do more of, and robots on the things that robots can do that maybe are monotonous or ergonomically challenging, right? Customers are saying that there's an opportunity to kind of give their employees more job satisfaction because now they're working with robotics, they're working alongside of robotics, or maybe upskilling themselves a bit. So the focus on the customer and the customer's customer has always been there, but I think that there's a lot more focus now on employees, team members, satisfaction as well.
Rick, what are your thoughts on that?
3 years ago at the big trade shows, Modex and ProMat, when I worked the booth, customers would come up, prospects would come up, and they'd give you a sort of a funny look and ask you the question, what do these robots really do? And you'd sort of explain it, and then they would ask questions about, how it worked and that sort of thing. And they typically ended with, why would I risk my job? Why would I risk my job to actually deploy these robots in my facility in this mission critical app? And the conversation over the last year is just the opposite. They know what robots do. They know the benefits. And the conversation typically ends with, and the feeling that if I don't do something now, my job is at risk. So it's just the opposite. Where 3 years ago, it was they thought they were putting their job at risk to deploy robotics. And now it's all about my job is at risk if I don't deploy robotics. That's one of the big things. Along with that, and I was at a major industry 3PL last week, and this is a very sophisticated business, and the conversation is a lot about we don't have that expertise. We don't have that expertise to deploy automation in our facilities. We need a partner. We need a partner like Locus to help do that, to help guide us through that transition. And it's messy in a lot of these organizations. A lot of these organizations have been doing the same thing for years and years and years. And to come in and deploy automation, it's very disruptive. It takes a champion to do it. They need small wins and successes along the way, and they need a partner, whether it's Zebra or Berkshire Grey. They need a partner to help them do it, and be a thought leader in helping them drive change in that organization. So it's all about driving change and helping them do it. And anyone who can be that strategic partner, I think, has a big leg up with these accounts.
So are you seeing more business generated from companies that have never used in a serious way automation before, and they're looking to retrofit existing facilities? Or are you seeing companies that have automation, but now they're looking to do clean sheet, design from the ground up type of facilities in which you're a partner?
The market segments into two areas, brownfield and greenfield. And that's how the market is structured right now. As I mentioned, there are about 140,000 brownfield buildings out there today. They all have to do something over the next 10 years. It's not all going to happen in the next year or two. Over the next 10 years, they all have to do it. So there's a massive market there. And there are very few companies right now that can automate those brownfield buildings. To go into an unstructured space, companies like Zebra, Locus, Six River, we all can do it. We all have different pros and cons with our solutions. We can do that. In the greenfield space, there are more players that can automate that space. There are goods to man solutions where you need bare floor to be able to do it, and there are more players that can actually automate those spaces. So it's a little of both.
Melanie, what are you hearing from customers, and is it different from what you were hearing a couple of years ago? Is it in line with what both Rick and Jessica were saying?
Yeah, a lot of it is in line with what they're saying. I think some of the other things that we're hearing is just timed automation. They're very impatient suddenly. I think that if you talk to customers, 3 years ago, people wanted to do proof of concepts. They wanted to try before they buy. They wanted to validate that the technology worked. Now, as Rick said, people understand the technology and they're just like, what's the time to deploy? And they don't want to hear any kind of delay. They're like, if you can have robots here next week, we've got a deal, kind of thing. And they're not that enamored with proof of concepts because they do trust that the technology works. I would say that the other thing that we're seeing that's becoming a more and more urgent topic is obviously safety and general interoperability. And general interoperability is not just robot to robot, but it's system to system. How do I get this hand scanner to work with this robot? How do I get this printer to work with this robot? Excuse me. And I think those are some of the things that we're seeing. Excuse me.
Yeah. So based on that pace and the sort of impatience, we want this today, it makes me think that that things are accelerating. And so, Rick, I'm wondering if you could tell me what you think warehouse robotics, what are warehouses going to look like a decade from now? Which is a long time. And
well, a decade is hard to predict, obviously, and I'm not sure I'm smart enough to know the answer to that. But over the next several years, as I mentioned, there are well over 100,000 buildings out there that have to be automated around the globe. That will happen in stages. I think if we fast forward 8-10 years from now, I think most of those will be automated at some level. The 3PL industry is really forced to do it because of cost structured SLAs and that sort of thing as they pursue new business. If you're a very large 3PL and you're going after new business, if you're bidding automation as part of that solution, you're going to be more competitive. And I think in all the 3PL business going forward around the globe, that will all become a very automated building. I think as new buildings go up, and as I mentioned, there'll be 6 or 7 billion square feet of new space being built. when that new space is being built, it will be automated when it's built, versus the way it is really today. Less than 10% of the new space being built today is fully automated. And I think going forward, as we continue to build billions and billions of feet, right when it's built from the ground up, it will be automated. And I think that's one of the big changes that'll happen. And it will be end-to-end automation. It won't just be one part of it. All of us on this call solve different problems. But I think going forward, there'll be multiple vendors in those buildings from day one, from ground one, when it gets built, and it'll get designed in.
Jessica, and Melanie, where do you think that humans will fit in that future, especially in these ground up warehouses? Jessica, why don't you kick it off?
There's always going to be some human touch in this, right? I think that maybe it's like I said before, more in the things that humans want to do running the operation, and maybe less in the let me do the heavy lifting and the things that are more ergonomically challenging, or as Melanie said, more safety challenging. So I think we'll continue to move towards more and more automation. I think I said before, doing this in a modular and flexible way. Rick referenced the Brownfield and Greenfield, being able to partner with organizations like Berkshire Grey that can go in and flip over a Brownfield site, without taking your operation down, is going to be really important. And then being able to automate brand new facilities is going to be exciting. And, we'll see more and more of that as we go forward. I think the other thing that we'll see is more micro fulfillment opportunities. So getting more fulfillment locations closer to more humans. So smaller, but closer, in more urban areas.
I am so glad you provide the perfect segue to the last question, which is how will this industry shift to more of a decentralized future, specifically with small mom and pop hardware stores or independent bookstores? Are these types of companies going to be using robots and to help with delivery and fulfillment? And Melanie, I'd love to hear your point of view on that.
I think some of that's complicated, because I think that when you look at smaller mom and pop places, they don't have the capital to invest in some of these strategies today. It's not to say that over the next couple of years or the next decade, the economics won't change, but today it's still a little out of reach. It's more something for the back of a large brick and mortar chain, like we're seeing with large providers like Walmart and Target and Amazon. And in many ways, Whole Foods was a play at Amazon trying to get back distribution centers in city areas, right? And so I think that it's going to be hard to say what the future is for mom and pop ventures in terms of robotic technology, but we are working very hard as an industry to make the technology more democratized and more accessible. But I don't know on what timeline that'll happen.
Rick, do you have any final thoughts on that?
I think that's going to be well down the road. I think to get an ROI for a robotic solution, you have to have a certain amount of scale and bulk and volume. And I think mom and pop businesses, it's going to be a while before they get there. I think years and years. And I think it's, for the most part, going to be a larger business play over the next 5 years, certainly.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for all that. Time flew by. I have so many more questions, but I do want to thank you for your time and joining us again at TC Sessions Robotics.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.